Hello, my friends, and welcome back. And welcome, Jake Broe, to the podcast.
Thanks for having me back, Arthur. I think it's been almost 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, the very first podcast I ever made was with you, and actually, I got the idea from you. We just talked about that I was a little bit before on your channel. I think it was like November 2022 when I was on your channel, and in December, I made my very first podcast, and it was you. So that's where it all got started. And now it's like a year and a half later, we're back here.
Well, I think these crossovers and these collaborations are a lot of fun. It's weird being a YouTuber because, I mean, maybe you have employees or people you work with, but I don't. So being able to speak to other YouTubers, even in this podcast format, for me, it's kind of like we're kind of like colleagues, we're kind of like
Yeah.
coworkers, even though we don't coordinate anything.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm getting paid by the CIA. So, uh,
I I keep waiting for my CIA check. I guess the paperwork has been held up again.
oh, damn
American
it.
bureaucracy is pretty bad, but one of these days I'm going to get that back pay from the CIA for all the work I've done.
Yeah, yeah. But hey, I mean, I'll jump right into it because I haven't gone to Ukraine for a few months now after the honeymoon. But you have made big waves with the 69 Sniffing Brigade. You have set two big records. So what's your summary of the fundraising with them? Like, what's the total amount, and are you gonna do any other ones?
In the event people aren't familiar, for my birthday in May, I did a fundraiser with the 69th Sniffing Brigade. If you're a follower of Archer's channel, you know who those guys are, based out of Estonia. They contacted me, and my original goal was to fundraise $40,000 for my 40th birthday, and my subscribers smashed that in the first like 30 or 40 minutes of the video being uploaded. It quickly shot to 100,000 and then 200,000 by like the second day. And then I decided we could go big. So it hit 1 million, and then I kind of cut it off, and it hit a million within a week. It eventually drifted to 1.2 million.
Mm.
And that was enough to purchase 30 vehicles and easily over 1,000 drones. You have the less expensive FPVs and then the more expensive Mavics. It's not just drones and trucks. There's also, the battery banks and socks and other random supplies, spare tires, drone jammers. So I did that, and it took the 69th Civic Brigade about 3 months to complete all the work. 30 trucks is a lot on top of the other fundraisers and vehicles they produce. We did another fundraiser, I think that was early August. And once again, within a week, my subscribers took it to over a million. It drifted to 1.1. This was my 1,000 Days of War campaign. The 69th is currently, once again, purchasing and delivering these trucks. The first 10 have already arrived. So in total, there's 40 trucks with my name on it driving around Ukraine somewhere, with another 20 trucks arriving within the next month or so. So once all the work is complete, I can start planning potentially for my next fundraiser with the 69th.
You're gonna do another one.
Sure, why not?
Are we gonna see you in Ukraine also? Are you gonna join us?
I do want to, but I don't think it would have been appropriate for me to basically take a week off YouTubing. I mean, I can vlog or do shorts, but prior to the U.S. election on November 5th, I don't think I have 7 or 8 days to spend on a plane, a train, and in a truck, driving around, because I think this November election is pretty damn important here in the United States.
One of my comedian friends made a joke, but it's a very good case that, like most of the Baltic states and Northern European states, they should not invest in their own presidential elections because the United States presidential election means so much more to our security. We should take all of that money and put it to who we want to win in the US, so we get our guy there. Because it don't really matter who's the Estonian president; it matters who's the US president right here also.
What's the population of Estonia again? It's like,
1 million.
I mean, your country has as many people as Milwaukee County. where I'm from in Wisconsin. So the United States is just huge. And it's very different. You've been to America, you know it, but I think for Europeans, they say, why do you keep saying what state you're from? You're from the United States. That's one country. You only get to count it as one. But the Pacific Northwest is very different from the Deep South, which is very different from the East Coast. I'm from the Midwest. Culturally, Americans are very different, even though we share a common language and a common currency and we have freedom of movement. But yeah, it's tough with the way our Constitution is framed. First past the post voting, we only get two parties. And these two parties, even within the parties, the different factions all hate each other. They have conflicting interests. Like, it's hard for a nation of 330 million people, as diverse as we are, to be crammed into two parties and then every 4 years go head to head. So there's just a lot of internal division, and Russia understands our weaknesses. They exploit it. They amplify the division. They make Americans hate Americans. And it's just a very sad time in America right now that potentially Donald Trump could become president again. He's the first president in U.S. history that has never tried to unite the American people. He never speaks in any kind of language of unity. It's always division. It's always hate. It's always us versus them. I feel very bad for America if Trump gets back into the office, because it'll be 4 years of just basically rioting, in my opinion, like it was the first time he was president.
So, like, tying this to Ukraine and Trump and Johnson being sometimes very much anti sending aid to Ukraine, other times like letting it pass somehow. Johnson changed his mind for some reason. I always say to my audience, this is what I believe. Maybe I misunderstand America, that sending weapons, not money, but weapons to Ukraine, American weapons, is in political and pure business interest in the United States. Do you agree with this or no?
Yeah, there's no debate from any policy experts. Anyone familiar with international law or the defense industry, like, it's a wide spectrum of experts who say, yes, it is in the best interest of the United States to promote democracy and to support countries that like us. Ukraine likes us. Why would we not want to help them? Russia hates us. They've hated us for a long time. Whether or not Donald Trump is president or in charge, whether or not Donald Trump claims to be great friends with Vladimir Putin, this is nonsense. American weapons have killed hundreds of thousands of Russians the last 2.5 years. Anybody who lives in this fantasy reality that if I vote for Donald Trump, he's the peace candidate because he can get along with Vladimir Putin, you really think the Russians are just going to forgive us on November 6th for all the people that the Russian military has lost at the hands of javelins and Gimler's rounds and HIMARS? Like, it's ridiculous. These people are insane who believe that Donald Trump is the peace candidate and everyone's going to get along if we just magically vote for him.
It is strange. Every time I talk about this, I get a huge backlash from my audience that they say, okay, first of all, don't stick your nose into United States politics. You don't know nothing. You're from Europe. You shouldn't talk about this.
That is a form of intimidation from Trump supporters. They do it on purpose. They know that they have a flawed candidate. They know that Donald Trump doesn't make sense most of the time. And when people around the world correctly point out his flaws, yeah, you're not American. Shut up. Don't get involved. Meanwhile, some of the top pro-Trump influencers on Twitter are not even American citizens. This Ian Miles guy is from Indonesia, and Donald Trump, Elon Musk retweets him all the time. A lot of Donald Trump's biggest supporters are not U.S. citizens. These are people who just want chaos in the United States and they hate democracy.
I cannot really understand it at all. I mean, as an Estonian, I'm a patriot of my country, but I understand very well of what our foundation of democracy is based on. It's based on United States weaponry and Ramstein Air Base and the Western Alliance forces in the Baltic states. It's all United States rules-based orders of the world. And they might call us, oh, you're the slave of Washington, but no, I we have to choose. We have to choose an overlord in Estonia, because that's the only way a small Baltic state can exist, and we choose a very good friend right now, and I feel like that. And
This is the
people
division. We can be honest about the United States. We're an economic empire. So at the end of World War II, the major industrial powers all destroyed themselves. Prior to World War II, the major industrial powers, France, Germany, the UK, Japan, by 1945, they were all destroyed. It was only the United States, just the United States in 1946, made up more than 50% of the world's GDP. And we leveraged that to impose the new international rules based order. This is the Bretton Woods Agreement. And we said, we're not doing empires anymore. The United States Navy is going to patrol the world's ocean. We're going to guarantee freedom of navigation. Everyone can trade with everyone. And the rule is, we're not redrawing the maps. You can't just invade your neighbor and say that that's my territory now. All the historical claims from empires of the past, we're done with that. You can't do that anymore. How much territory has the United States annexed in the last 75 years since being the global hegemon?
zero, no,
None.
Afghanistan,
I mean,
none.
we've intervened. Obviously, we toppled Saddam, and we were involved in Vietnam, and the United States has had the opportunity to invade Mexico and take their land, invade Canada and take their land, invade Cuba and take their land. And that's not been our goal. It's not necessary in order to be a more prosperous nation. We are an economic empire, we are a cultural superpower, but we're not trying to own people, we're not trying to enslave people, which is what the Russians want. The Russians are trying to reconstitute their empire, and they're taking land and they're taking people. They're not giving anyone a choice. So, back to your point of which master do we want to serve in Estonia? There's the Russians, where if they take you, you have no say in anything that happens to you. Or there's the Americans, where, yes, you're kind of tied into our economic system. You have to play by our economic rules. But do you feel like the United States controls your government? Do you feel like the United States picks your candidates?
In no way. We just get a very great system where we can all make a lot of money because we sell stuff to our neighbors, not invade them. It's really good for us to trade freely. It's really
So
nice, actually.
what the Russians want to do is equate what they do with what America does. The Russians want you to believe that your politicians are all Western supporting puppets and the CIA secretly controls them all, because that's what Russia does. The FSB controls all of the candidates of their satellite nations, of their subordinate countries. So, yeah, we just need to speak out loud what's actually happening here. There's a lot the United States has been guilty of the last 75 years, but we change, we evolve. Donald Trump was a very different president than Barack Obama. Obama was a very different president than Bush. Biden was a very different president than Donald Trump. We still have democracy here in the United States, and administrations change, policies change, the parties change. And I think that's healthy and good. Whereas the last 25 years, Russia has only known one czar, and it's been Vladimir Putin and whatever he wants in the moment.
Yeah, and recently, I mean, they are running out of weapons to intimidate the West with, and one of the most efficient one, which I cannot understand why it's based on fear, is the nuclear saber rattling, nuclear threats. I mean, we in the Baltic states, again, we don't even take them seriously because for us it doesn't really mean anything, because Russian tanks and artillery could do as much damage to us than a nuclear weapon, and we know what they do with tanks and artillery. So it's just so much out of this world, the nuclear weapon, that we don't even like think about it. But the United States, this is one of the only things that could actually hurt you, a Russian nuclear weapon. So how do you, as a nuclear officer, how do you feel about this? Do you take it seriously?
Of course. So I left the Air Force in early 2022. For those who don't know my background, I was a nuclear missile operations officer. I was in charge of the maintenance, security, and operations for the Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile system. So I spent years, over 300 days, underground in a launch control capsule. And I was kind of, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I was kind of jaded about my job, viewing it as this holdover occupation from the Cold War that wasn't really relevant anymore. And in my mind, thinking back to 2018, 2019, I was saying to myself, why am I doing this? Like, why am I sleeping on a shelf underground eating, Uncrustables, monitoring this system when I don't think it'll ever be used? And I wasn't even sure if we needed it. Given the nuclear triad, we still had bombers, still had submarines. Why do we need land-based ICBMs? And boy, was I wrong. And the Pentagon was correct, because the Russians apparently do want their empire back, and they are willing to threaten the use of nuclear weapons if they don't get what they want. This is something that hasn't happened since World War II. We've never been in this situation where a nuclear power has invaded their neighbor, and they're saying, let me kill my neighbor and take his land, otherwise I will nuke you in your safe, peaceful, democratic country. This is a new thing that Vladimir Putin has done. And yeah, we have to respect it. We have to take it serious. I don't want to see Berlin or Paris or London or Washington, D.C. nuked by the Russians. That is what Dmitry Medvedev and Putin are threatening every day with their posturing and their language. And the question is how do you defeat a nuclear superpower? Russia might not be great in a lot of things, but their ICBMs are real. Their nuclear weapons definitely do work. There might be a very high failure rate, but they're still going to get off some hits. And I don't want to frame it this way, but how do you defeat a nuclear superpower? Have we been doing it the last 2.5 years? Russia's not used a nuke, and they're not exactly winning. I wouldn't call 30,000 casualties in over 2 years just to take the village of Vuhledar winning. I understand for people who support Russia, they say, look at the map, look at the map. Russia took a field this week, and we're on our way to taking the entirety of Donetsk. Mm-hmm. Another 5 years, and we'll get Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. The expression is, I don't know if I'm saying it right, a Pyrrhic victory, where you might have technically won that battle for Vuhledar, but if you lost 30,000 troops to take a village with a pre-war population of 15,000, is that really winning Russia? So I've made this argument, I think, to you, is the real war map is not deepstatemap.live. The real war map is Russia's treasuries, their reserves. Russia will lose this war when they run out of money. And it's a war of attrition. And every day, Ukrainians just have to out-ratio the Russians at least 3-1 on the battlefield in order to win that war of attrition. So I'm doing everything I can to support Ukraine, and I think this is the most clear-cut, noble fight for anyone who cares about freedom and democracy in the world. People have to be supporting Ukraine.
I do agree. I mean, one of the hardest things, you make this video, I do believe in Ukrainian victory, I do believe in the resolve, I feel like it's my purpose right now in my life to do this. I do the video, I upload it, and then you see these bots and trolls, whoever is paying them, but they are exactly bringing the argument that, oh, look, Russia is advancing every day, which is true. They are advancing meter by meter, losing thousands of men, which in my eyes is also not a victory. But one of the hardest moments of patience is not to react to that. And I never do. I never react, but I want to so bad sometimes.
On my channel, I just block them and move on. I mean, I monitor all the comments, and I probably have to block about a dozen people a day saying, I'm paid by the CIA, and Vladimir Putin's on the right side. And for people around the world, so the global South, a lot of these comments, a lot of these people are from either Africa, the Middle East, maybe Southeast Asia or whatever. And Russia has managed to trick the global South into believing they were never an empire or a colonial power. I just read this in Timothy Schneider's book on freedom. I'm reading it now. And it's a weird concept. But Russia has convinced the global south that white people have never colonized white people. Sure, Europeans have wars, they like killing each other, but they don't colonize each other. White people only colonize people from the global south. This is Russian propaganda that people in Africa or the Middle East have been convinced of, erasing Russia's own crimes in history from their colonial expeditions to Eastern Europe, the Baltics, the Caucasus, Central Asia. Russia's a land power. If they were better at building ships and they could have won any naval battles, then yeah, they happily would have colonized South America, Africa, and Southeast Asia in the 1700s and 1800s. But Russia sucks at building ships.
Yeah, then I remember this, like watching a video about this Japanese victory before the First World War. Was it 1905 or something? When the entire Russian Baltic Sea fleet, when it finally went across Africa and everywhere to Japan, was just sunk immediately. It was a beautiful moment in history.
Yeah, the Japanese, it was the United States that opened up Japan. I forget which presidents, but it was like the 1850s or whatever.
Hmm.
And it's this famous moment in American history where we had a metal steam-powered ship sail into the harbor of Tokyo to diplomatically and trade relations open up Japan. And Japan had never seen a metal ship before. Japan had always had a navy and been a naval power, but their ships had always been wood. So when the United States rolled in with a metal ship that was steam powered, the Japanese realized they were falling behind. And between 1850 and 1900, they caught up. They were very quick to adopt Western technology, cannons and musket rifles or whatever. And then, yeah, by early 1900s, they were. I mean, really,
Being Russia, yeah.
World War II technically started in the 1890s with Japan invading Korea, and then they started their expansionism. But yeah, they kicked the Russians' asses in the early 1900s.
But on another note, though, what do you think? I mean, I have a list in my head of the answer, but what do you think? What is the capability right now that the West has right now that if they would send, it would change the war tomorrow?
So we're in a holding pattern for the next 3 weeks until this election in the United States is over. And unfortunately, Donald Trump is not a normal candidate, and he no longer concedes elections when he loses them. He never conceded the 2020 election, and it doesn't matter how many votes or states he loses by, he's not going to concede the election on November 5th. But if he on November 6th has lost by like 3 or 4 states, I think we can start planning for the next year worth of military aid and funding. I think the NATO alliance and Europeans are terrified right now of Donald Trump returning. And everyone is taking a posture of, if Donald Trump wins, then I can say that I wasn't too involved with supporting Ukraine because, well, obviously not the Scandinavians or the Baltics, but potentially Germany. Germany seems to be shifting their tone, anticipating that Trump might return. But if Kamala Harris wins and potentially the Democrats can take back the House, I think we're going to get another military aid package this December or January, probably before Harris even takes office on January 20th. I think Congress is going to vote again on another $60 billion in aid. So you said, what does Ukraine want or need? Well, they just need more of everything. They need more ammunition, more Gimlis rounds, more ATACMS, more F-16s. They need more of everything. The side who has more material and more resources eventually overtakes the other side. And Ukraine simply is just not getting enough right now. And I don't think they can plan serious operations like this invasion of Kursk. I just don't know if they can commit too much to holding on to the territory they've taken. Because once again, they can't plan for next year until they know what happens on November 5th.
So, in your eyes, it's not about this Wunderwaffe that the United States could send JASSM missiles or whatever the US has that they haven't even unlocked at all for Ukraine. It's just sending more of what they have sent and more bigger quantities, and that would be the key.
Yes. There is one thing the United States can do that they haven't done, and it's been talked about briefly, but um, I'll just give it to you. Uh, Something the United States can do that they haven't done is designate Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. The United States has only ever done this to four countries: North Korea, Cuba, Syria, and Iran. And the United States won't do this, I believe, because when you designate a country a state sponsor of terrorism, you cut all diplomatic ties. You literally close your embassies and pull all of your diplomats out. If you're designated a state sponsor of terrorism, no American company can do business with you. It's illegal. So every company that has any economic link to Russia has to sever that link. Um, the United States hasn't done this because, once again, Russia has 6,000 nuclear weapons, and we need diplomacy, we need communications, we need dialogue to prevent misunderstandings that could escalate to a nuclear war. But maybe a year from now, we'll be having this conversation and it might finally get to that point. But I'm just going to hope that, somebody sneaks up behind Putin with a knife or a gun, and we can get this war over faster. As soon as Putin's dead, this war is over.
I'm not so sure about this because if I look at Putin's entourage or the 10 guys close to him, honestly, he's one of the most balanced guys. I'm very much hoping he would die in a suspicious way, but Prigozhin or Mishushin or whoever he has ever been close to him has always been worse in my eyes. If I would imagine like his friends having power, I have the
It,
feeling that they would make much worse decisions.
it's all bluster and posturing. So Prigozhin's dead, and
Hmm.
I was waiting for a video. I was waiting for a video to be released of Prigozhin speaking on camera saying, "Here's what really happened." And that video never happened. Why? Well, it's because if he did that, then anybody who was friends with Prigozhin or Prigozhin's wife or children all would have been murdered by Putin. So that's how most dictators maintain absolute loyalty, is they threaten their families. If you betray me even from beyond the grave, I'm going to torture your daughter before I cut her head off. So that's why I think there's no Prigozhin tape. But I'm now proving to you that they are rational actors, that there are things they care about. If you value the life of your own children, then you probably wouldn't start a thermonuclear war in which Moscow is going to get hit at least 30 times by nuclear weapons if it's an all out exchange. So, despite the craziness that we see from what Putin's inner circle is, I still don't think you make it to that level, even in Putin's regime, unless you have competence and you're somewhat of a rational actor. So yeah, if Putin's dead, I think there would have to be an internal power struggle and a consolidation. If that's happening, whoever rises to the top, they don't have the excess capacity to continue this stupid war in Ukraine. I think they would either try to freeze it immediately or give concessions just to have a reprieve until they can internally consolidate power. We don't know, but 2025 might get interesting, and we could see that scenario playing out exactly. But there's a lot of different ways this war can go.
I mean, in Estonia, we have seen here about 3 centuries of the same pattern of Russia getting big and powerful, then they being defeated or internally collapsed, then they consolidate or keep concessions, as you said, and consolidate power to a new leader, and they do it all over again. So, Putin being dead and this war being frozen or changed or territory ceded back to Ukraine or given back to Ukraine. I mean, if Russia is not defeated in Ukraine and the system is not toppled, in 20 years we'll see the same thing in my lifetime and in your lifetime, because that's how the pattern has repeated itself quite fast recently. We don't have to wait a century. It will just come back because Russia doesn't really change until the system changes. So, I mean, I wouldn't like many people ask, okay, I want this war to end. I honestly don't want it to end. I want Russia to end. In this existence that they have now. Otherwise, they would just bring another war: Georgia, Chechnya, Ukraine. I mean, it's a repeating pattern.
It could be culture, language, geography. Something is causing this pattern to repeat where power consolidates in the Kremlin and then they go through a period of expansionism. So the only way to stop this is to stop the consolidation of power. Belarus is its own country, about 10 million people. Russia is 140. Russia should really just be broken up into 14 Belarus-sized countries. It's okay if they all speak Russian and they're different nations. Just because you speak the same language doesn't mean you have to be the same country. How many different countries are there in the world that all speak Arabic? They don't have to be one country, even if they're the same religion, same ethnicity, same language. How many countries in the world speak Spanish? And once again, historically, culturally, language, religion, you don't have to be the same country just because you speak the same language. That's one of the myths that Russia has gotten away with, saying, oh, they speak Russian in the Donbass region. That should be our territory then. No, that's not how this works. There are many countries in the world that speak English, remnants of the British Empire. Just because you speak the same language doesn't mean you have to be the same country.
I mean, that's exactly what Brezhnev did. Is he installed these people in Donbass when these factories and mines were built up, also in Estonia, eastern Estonia. It used to be 90% Estonian speaking. Now eastern Estonia, which is called Ida-Virumaa, it's the called of the county, or this area, is like 90% Russian speaking, ethnic Russians, because they built up all these mines and panel housing, panelka we call them. And the deal was that if you come from like Kazakhstan or Chechnya, you build this for the state, you get an apartment there for free. And this is how they moved Estonians out and Russians in. And what do you know? 50 years later, you got a Russian-speaking area that you need to protect. So it's like installing a virus, pretty much. So this tactic is not Putin like reacting to Russians abroad. This is started by the Soviet Union, even the Tsars, actually. I mean, Peter the Great deported an entire city of Estonia, empty, like 25,000 people into Siberia. It's like, what, 300, 250 years ago? So this is like centuries old.
Well, I mean, every empire does that. Depopulate an area you like, and then move in settlers, people loyal to you, people similar to you. It's not a new concept.
Yeah. Question to you. If you were the chief of staff of the armed forces of Ukraine, like, right at this, like, what would you do differently with your armies, with your capabilities?
I have a theory that potentially Ukraine is waiting until after November 5th to start doing things that clearly are violations of international law, things that Russia is doing to Ukraine. But Ukraine can't do to Russia because they want to have the moral high ground. They want to stay on the good side of democratic and free countries. But I unfortunately have to make the argument that um, anything Russia is doing in violation of international law, those are now the rules of this war. They shouldn't be. Both sides should not be targeting civilians. Both sides should not be murdering POWs on the battlefield. That's not what I think Ukraine should do. Ukraine needs to use these jet drones to start destroying thermal power plants inside of Russia. More than 80% of Ukraine's thermal power plants have been knocked offline, all capacity lost. Ukraine is surviving, on individual isolated generators, and then a little bit of their hydropower, and then their nuclear power. The reports are that Russia is going to start targeting the nodes to disconnect the 3 remaining nuclear power plants. So if that's the rule of this war that Russia set, Ukraine has to do it to Russia. Any thermal power plant, coal fire burning power plant within 1,000 kilometers of the border, Ukraine has to destroy that going into this winter. It's terrible for the Russian people, but what's Russia's argument for Ukraine not being able to do that if they're doing it?
Also, the Russian people, I remember it was a huge surprise to me because me being Estonian when this war started, I remember I made a short talking that how I think that Russians are collectively responsible because in Estonia we don't really like the Russians that much. It's very easy for us to accept and know that they are an imperial nation. It's about the people who also share this imperial mindset. And I got a huge backlash on the international Western community of how can you like they're people, they're not to be blamed for Putin. And now it suddenly appears to the West also. If you look at interviews with people on the streets, some don't want to hear about this war. They want to hide their head under the sand and just enable it. Others support it. There are very, very few people who are against it openly, and some of them are in jail, of course. I do agree with you 100% because I feel Russian people are responsible for Putin's actions by enabling him to be there for 20 years. So it's a weird thing to say as a democratic, citizen of the West that Ukraine should start striking Russian civilian infrastructure. But I agree with it.
It has to be done. The other thing that Ukraine can do that they don't want to do is go after commercial Russian ships. Ukraine is getting their grain exports out through this corridor they created through Romanian and Bulgarian waters. And in the last 2 weeks, Russia's attacked like three of these commercial ships. They've not been sunk; they've only been damaged. But I don't know what the heck Russia is doing. Right now, there's a truce going on where Russia's commercial ships can get in and out wherever, and Ukraine's grain ships, commercial ships, can get in and out. And that ceasefire greatly benefits Russia. Russia imports and exports way more material and financial benefit, financial exports and imports than Ukraine does. Now, Ukraine still wants to succeed. This is important for global food security, and it is a source of revenue. But if they shut that off, this would be Russia just once again shooting themselves in the foot. Ukraine has the capability with their naval drones to just start sinking Russian commercial ships, mostly in the Black Sea. But if they wanted to be creative, I'm sure they could make it to the Baltic Sea as well. And that would be really bad for Russia. It'd be really bad for global supply chains if Russia could no longer get stuff in and out. But if you're facing genocide, if Russia nukes Kharkiv or nukes Kyiv, then there are no rules. There's no international law that anyone's respecting anymore. You do what you have to do to survive. Russia is threatening Ukraine with annihilation, and you got to do what you got to do. I understand.
Yeah, I also feel this international, like the moral high ground you said, this is the very control that holds Ukraine back so much because what does the moral high ground give them if not Western support? That's why they hold it. Because if they would really fight, or like total Krieg, like Goebbels said for the Germans, right? Let's go full out. I mean, Ukrainians are holding back. Also, they could sink every ship in the Black Sea if they wanted to. They're not doing that. They're not executing prisoners of war, which I'm not for at all. But Russia is doing that. I mean, the recent pictures you saw them, right?
Well, there's no benefit to Ukraine to doing that, so that's not even a
Not at
discussion.
all.
Like they
No.
want live bodies to exchange back for their own people.
Yeah.
But the
But like
Russians
the
don't
fact that
value
Russia
anyone's
is,
lives, so they don't care if they get their own guys back. It's tragic, the global discussion currently happening, because I don't I don't think there is any coherent argument that anyone can make in support of Russia. When when I when I see these flame wars on Twitter, when people are getting into arguments about the war in Ukraine, people supporting Russia don't actually support Russian soldiers. People around the world who support Russia, they do it because they hate the United States, they hate France, they hate Great Britain. Um, they're not pro-Russian. They're just anti-West for whatever reason, and that's kind of sad that Russian soldiers are dying, almost 1,000 a day or whatever, and nobody cries for them. Nobody's going to remember them. Nobody is honoring them. I don't know what any of them are dying for. I don't know what motivates them to fight. Uh, all I can do is make assumptions, and it's bleak. And I think Russia's heading for a very dark future, both economically and demographically. Even if a ceasefire is achieved, even if Putin manages to hold on to territory, long term, over the next 20, 30 years, Russia is a doomed nation. And for anybody that understands demographics or economics, anybody who understands the real long term impacts of Putin's decision, if they're smart, they've already got an exit plan. If you have language skills, if you have tech skills, if you have money and you can get out of Russia, then yeah, you should flee for a better life in Dubai or Istanbul or Paris or London if you can make it.
I mean, after the fall of the Soviet Union, I mean, Russian Empire is the continuation of Soviet Union was the continuation of the Tsarist Empire, and now it's the continuation of the Soviet Empire. All of the Western companies like ran to get that market. It was capitalism in its purest grade. The oligarchs gobbled everything up and made billions with it. The Western companies loved to do business with it, although the internals did not change. Russia was an empire in the year 2000. In 1990s, when two Chechen wars happened, it was an empire. It was an imperial war. But the Western companies ran to Russia to make money. What's going to be different in 10 years when this war is over? However it ends, like you said, 30 years, Russia's going to be a doomed nation. But the West, like a huge majority of the Western companies have pulled out, meaning whoever gets back in first makes billions. So why wouldn't this happen?
I don't think people are going back. I think in the 90s, there was this untouchable belief that globalization and free trade is what brings peace to the world. Nations that trade together don't go to war with each other. And Russia just completely destroyed that belief. It makes zero economic sense when all of Russia's pipeline infrastructure goes west to the European markets for Russia basically to just declare war on the West. That's what they did. Now, if Russia managed, like if Zelensky had taken the helicopter ride and fled after 3 days and Russia absorbed Ukraine in less than a week, I don't know, maybe things would have continued as normal and people in the West would have believed, well, I guess the Ukrainians actually really were Russian or they wanted to be Russian. Okay, let them be together, whatever, they're happy. Even if that wasn't true, that's what the perception would have been. But now, yeah, we have a serious problem where Western companies, Western know-how, Western capital has been flooding into places like China and Russia, and we just made them more powerful. We made them powerful to the point where they think they can start expanding their empires again. China is also an empire. After the 1950 Civil War, they brutally invaded Tibet and absorbed those people. The distinct culture and history of Tibet has been almost ethnically erased. The Chinese are doing it to the Uyghurs in the Western provinces right now. So a lot of Western companies are trying to divest from China. They're trying to get their people, they're trying to get their assets out. And I don't think we're going back anytime soon. I think we hit peak globalization probably in 2014. I mean, it was probably Russia's invasion of Crimea that was the apex, and we're now in recession. The COVID pandemic didn't help. People want to stop offshoring. A lot of U.S. companies are bringing manufacturing back to the United States. That's partially why we're experiencing such a huge economic boom right now. You can't trust dictators. You can't trust any of them because it's just like a human nature code or something. They just keep doing the same thing over and over. Once you internally consolidate power, you have no opposition. There's nobody that can criticize you, nobody that can touch you. They all do the same thing. They start looking at their neighbor's territory, their neighbor's stuff, and they say, well, why don't I just go kill those people and take their stuff? That's what humans have been doing for 10,000 years. The story of civilization is, hey, my neighbor's stuff looks kind of nice. Why don't I go kill them and take their stuff? It's stupid. And the United States in 1945 said, let's stop doing this. Let's try something different.
And I've been talking to people. Some people in Estonia, some of my friends have different opinions. They are predicting this like global big conflict, axis of evil, US West versus the global South, as you said, and then it ties into so simple things like investment policies, like like me, right? I invest in S&P 500. I believe in it. It's conservative, and I love it. It's my favorite instrument, and I wouldn't invest in it if I wouldn't believe the United States-led system in the world would still be there in 100 years. I do believe it, and I invest in it. That's where I put my money in.
Do you know? Do you know the geopolitical strategist Peter Zion?
Yeah.
Well, he makes the argument in his books that the United States is just geographically blessed. We have the best land, the best real estate in the world. We're protected by the Pacific
Hmm.
Ocean on the west, the Atlantic Ocean on the east. Our neighbors, Canada and Mexico, are not a threat to us, really. And we have the best farmland. We have the best navigable waters. The United States has been succeeding the last 200 plus years, not because we're a democracy, not because we have a superior culture or work ethic. It's because of the geography. We have been blessed with such amazing geography that we couldn't screw it up. Despite a terrible system of government, despite electing horrible leaders, we're still succeeding because the game is rigged. We just have the best geography in the world. So I just think that's funny, and I like pointing that out because that is a really compelling argument. Yeah, the United States is going to continue to thrive, continue to do well. When you say I'm going to invest in the S&P 500,
Hmm.
these are America's 500 largest companies that are publicly traded. I don't think anything's going to slow down for the United States anytime soon. All of the most creative innovation happening in the world is happening with American companies. This AI revolution we're currently in, it's freaky. When I watch these shorts or these YouTube videos
Oh yeah.
showing people using AI, creating new things, and yeah, I can see how this is going to get really weird. Like Ready Player One, if you're familiar with that book or movie, like Ready Player One, weird is coming really fast, and part of it's exciting, part of it's terrifying. But people are going to make a lot of money here in the United States leveraging this new technology.
And it's like people in the US, especially if like, there's this dualism, and Trump plays this card that things are screwed right now. We need to fix it. But I look at the United States from my point of view from Estonia, and I see a thriving country economically. Am I blind or what? Because I see like a
Unemployment
very
is under
powerful.
4%.
Yeah,
Inflation is under 3%. The
it's
stock market is at
amazing.
all-time high. Wages are up. Like all
Yeah.
economic metrics that you can objectively measure show that the United States is doing great. And whoever is responsible for this magical upsurge, it's partly policy and administration, but it's also just partly natural global economic cycles. But yeah, Donald Trump's a liar, and he just makes shit up, and it works. People here in the United States are somehow convinced that everything's terrible. And we can go ahead and pretend that Donald Trump wins in November, he takes office in January. He would immediately start screaming everything is fantastic and it's because of him, and he has to remain in power forever. Otherwise, we'll lose this new magical era that looks exactly how it looks today. Nothing would change if he became president in 3 months, but he would then say, I'm now president. Unemployment's under 4%, inflation's under 3%, the stock market's at all-time high. Look what I achieved. I am the greatest president in the history of
It's
the United
so
States.
stupid.
It's
I
it's so
can't.
stupid. The people who support him, who actually somehow can find a way to cognitively believe this nonsense, are so stupid.
Yeah, I mean, I see this like doom predictions all the time, everywhere, and then in Estonia also we have far right parties in Estonia who do exactly the same playbook. They say everything is screwed. We gotta fight against the immigrants. First of all, there is no immigrants in Estonia because the wages are like quite small, and it's cold, and like it's pretty dark in here. Right? Nobody wants to come here. There's no immigrants here. And their card is exactly Donald Trump's card. It's like their idol. They play the same card. Okay, we don't want these Ukrainian refugees. We don't want black people in Estonia. That's their card. We don't have any. But they create this reality, and people go to vote on that because otherwise, like, the language would die out. And they're like creating this far right populist myth. and it's perfect. We're in an American-led system. Everybody's making a lot of money. Everybody's happy and free. What is there to change? I don't know.
It's you know, unfortunately, the way that the human brain has developed, we're much more concerned with negative stories. Uh, Growing up as hunter gatherers on the African savannah or whatever, the people more likely to live longer and survive were the paranoid people. Is
Mm.
that a tiger hiding in the bush? Is that a snake behind that rock? Is that creepy shadow I just saw really a spider that might be poisonous? Humans naturally are just paranoid about potential threats and dangers. And people in politics, they can either be positive and try to give uplifting and, inspiring speeches and messages, or they can, supercharge your amygdala and just hit you with fear tactics over and over and over again. And I don't know if like dopamine is released or whatever, but that's not the way I live my life. I have no understanding why people listen to these right-wing podcasts or, Newsmax or OAN where when you tune in, the only thing you're going to hear is hate. Hate and fear. Here's a story about hate and fear. Here's a story about hate and fear. Here's a story about hate and fear. And there are tens of millions of Americans who just sit there for hours every day listening and watching this stuff, and they think they're preparing for something. They think that taking in this information will protect their daughter or save their wife or help their neighbor. Like it just, I don't understand why anyone would live this way, with constant like. I spent 4 years in North Dakota when I was in the Air Force, and I would, it's a very conservative red state that goes 60 to 70% for Trump. And I'm talking to people, and I'm like, "What's the number one issue to you?" And they're like, "Illegals, immigration." And I'm like, "How many Venezuelans are there here in North Dakota? How have you been personally impacted?" And these people at Trump rallies, when you put them on the spots, how have you been personally impacted? What firsthand stories do you know about crime or drugs or illegal immigration? And they have nothing. They just saw stuff on Fox News, OAN, Newsmax, whatever. That's how they want to live their lives. And it's America. It's a free country. You can do that. But I think it's a miserable existence, and I pity these people.
It's the same here. I really don't understand. Like I almost like usually I feel happy. Usually I feel content. I want to go home. I want to work. I want to see my wife. And then I see these people who like live for fear. They want to be afraid and prepare for this big thing that's coming to take everything from them or everything is screwed up. I see the world. It's like beautiful. It's wonderful. We have a wonderful system. Everything is so good. It's very hard for me to understand how can one even live like that? How can you exist like that? It seems so miserable, honestly.
Well, those people have higher blood pressure and are more likely to develop dementia. I mean, I'm making stuff up, Steer. I don't know that, but I would
Yeah,
assume
of
that
course. But
with leading your life that way, where you just take in social media and corporate media that's just continuous hate and fear, versus somebody who wants to live in the moment, get some fresh air, spend time with your loved ones, practice gratitude, practice
mm-hmm,
positivity, work
mm-hmm.
towards improving your own damn life every single day rather than trying to control other people's lives. I imagine those people are much more fulfilled and happy and equates to a longer life. I could be wrong.
We went to quite like philosophical here already, but yeah, I mean I would end the Ukraine segment and just maybe ask you some questions about like YouTube or mental health, perhaps if you're okay with that.
Sure, yeah, go for it, man.
Like because you are one of the most consistent Ukraine war bloggers, Western bloggers there is, and I mean I do this stuff. I know how crazy it can go sometimes. So how do you balance yourself? How do you keep your mental health stable, and how do you keep yourself happy?
So I post main videos on my channel Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday. If I have extra time and ambition, I'll do a podcast or a live stream or a random video maybe for Saturdays. So I do compartmentalize. I have an office in my home. That's my office. I try not to do stuff related to the war when I'm not sitting at this desk, when I'm not in my office. So it is important to have other interests that you can focus on where you can detach, and that's a luxury. I understand for Ukrainian soldiers sleeping in a trench, they can't do that. So I have empathy. I try to have understanding for the difficulties that so many people are experiencing right now. But yeah, I'm a performer. I have to be physically healthy. I have to be mentally fit in order to show up every other day to make these 30-minute videos. And I've made 600 of them in the last 2.5 years. So it's really bizarre that I stumbled into a job that was perfectly designed for my personality type. Um, I'm an INTJ. If you're familiar with the Myers-Briggs personality types, so I'm a master strategist. That is the personality type. It's a 4x4 grid. There's 16 different personalities, and my entire life, I don't know how I've been preparing for this moment. It There's that famous quote when the invasion happened, and Zelensky said, "So I guess fate has chosen us." I served 6 years in the Air Force as a nuclear missile operations officer. I got a master's in international relations. I was a pre-law political science student in undergrad. I have international travel experience. I spent 6 years in South Korea teaching English. I don't understand because it all seems random. It all seemed random while I was doing it. But then it turned into this career as a YouTuber in which I talk about geopolitics and international relations. So I'm a completionist. I'm a gamer in that as soon as I was introduced to the YouTube analytics, it just became a video game to me. How to optimize your videos, how to increase the metrics. It's addicting to me. And if I can put out supportive, helpful, positive content that I know a lot of people get value from, I mean, I'm blessed every single day to be doing what I'm doing. I still do have slight imposter syndrome. I don't understand why it's me and not, like a PhD professor or somebody who worked at the State Department or somebody who's fluent in Russian and Ukrainian. But I guess it's me. And I view myself as part of this war effort now. These two fundraisers I did, those trucks I know have saved lives, and those drones I know have taken lives. So that's something I have to ethically compartmentalize, knowing that I'm a participant. I'm not just a commentator. You know this as well, Artur. Like, we're now participants, and I feel this obligation to the war effort and to the people. And I take it serious. And when I think about the guys covered in mud sleeping in trenches, and I have a nice, comfy, warm bed upstairs, yeah, I will keep doing this forever in support of them, because it's, in my opinion, the least I can do, knowing what I know and being able to do what I can do.
Very good explanation, honestly. So, seems that you really enjoy what you do and you're really good at it. And
I wouldn't say enjoy. Enjoy might be the correct word, but I do have an obligation, and I do take pride in what I do.
yeah, better wording. Yeah. Um, I couldn't say enjoy. I mean, I really like the.
Artur, open up
Hmm?
to me. How are you doing? Because I know, just everyone's body chemistry is different. Everyone's personality is different. But like, genuinely, how are you doing right now?
I'm doing okay. Been 3 months sober now. I quit
You
alcohol.
stopped
I
drinking?
mean, I did, like, totally. I'm an alcoholic.
Do you think like
Yeah.
genetically you have like the genes that make you susceptible to alcohol abuse?
Yeah, I mean, my grandfather died of liver cancer, and he drank a lot, and he was into politics and did like similar stuff that I do now. And yeah, and I started drinking more and more. And I got married also. Little fact, I got married, and
Congratulations.
yeah, it's nice being married, and she's wonderful. But in my wedding, I was really drunk, and in my honeymoon in Ukraine, I was really drunk all the time. And enough was enough. Then on 22nd of July, I have a huge calendar at home when I do these red X's, and now it's nearing 3 months, and I'm sober. and it's really difficult to be sober.
Well, if you're at 3 months, then you're almost at 100 days. Someone is someone going to give you a 100-day coin for sobriety?
I'm gonna give it to myself. I'm gonna buy chocolate or something
Okay.
because, like,
All right,
yeah,
you got to do something. You got to do something to commemorate that 100-day, man, and send me a message. I want to hear from you.
yeah. I mean, a lot of people say, "Oh, I got sober." I watch these Instagram reels, right? Oh, I got sober. It's so blessed, so nice. And I'm sober, and it's horrible. I mean, I'm happy. I have a great life. I love my work, I love my wife, but just the anxiety. I mean, alcohol takes away your anxiety. If I cannot, I quit smoking also. Like, I cannot smoke, I cannot drink. What am I gonna do with my anxiety? I'm already in maxed antidepressants.
Is THC legal in Estonia?
That is that weed?
Yeah, edibles, weed, whatever. I know it's legal in some EU countries.
It's not legal here, no.
Okay. Well, I mean that's an option that a lot of people in the United States are adopting. Um, Alcohol consumption here in the United States is falling dramatically, and every time a new state legalizes marijuana, I think that's the correlation. I think a lot of people in the United States are swapping out, having drinks every evening for just vaping or smoking or doing edibles. And um, I was pretty anti-drugs like 20 years ago, but the older I get, yeah, I'm sympathetic. And if it helps them manage anxiety or stress or whatever, then as long as you're not driving, as long as you're not putting anyone at risk, as long as you're still functioning and paying your bills, people should be able to do what they want to do. That's my opinion.
Honestly, it's so weird to say this. People are against it so much, but thank God for antidepressants because I'm taking them, and I couldn't do what I do. I couldn't exist. I couldn't function without them. And besides them, I mean, this is my basis. Besides that, I was drinking heavily and smoking a lot. I mean, Ukraine was a huge party all the time because missiles are flying. It's so much anxiety. You think you're gonna die. Of course, it's better to die with a beer in your hand. And now I cut that all off because I'm married. I want to take care of my wife, and we're like planning family. But I didn't think how difficult it's gonna be to be like just sit with your crap, like feel shit, and I cannot go anywhere. I work out a lot. They can, like, there's nothing else I can do. That's it. I guess I gotta survive a few months more.
A few months more for what?
People tell me that, like, okay, you quit smoking and drinking so suddenly, maybe your body will get used to it and less stress is gonna happen. Maybe it's like this transitioning period.
Yeah. Uh, Existence is a struggle. It's never going to get easier. In the United States military, we have an expression: "Embrace the suck." There are
Yeah,
things you can control and things you can't control, and if you can control it, make it the best you can. But if you can't control it, you have to find a way to be able to then let it go and fall asleep that night. The older you get, I'm 40. You're pretty young, but man, the older you get, the harder it is to get good sleep. It's just kind of torture. So yeah, people will lean on drinking I mean, alcohol, in my opinion, makes sleep worse. But
hmm
uh, people do what they do, and I'm sorry to say it, Artur. It's never going to get easier as you get older. But that doesn't mean life's not worth living, or you're not going to have sweet victories and even some bitter defeats still in life. But you only get one life. We only get to be on this planet for a very small amount of time, and I think this is a pretty interesting and cool time to live. And I'm gonna do everything I can every day to experience and learn as much as I can. And I'm blessed to be in a position as a YouTuber where I can share my knowledge and experience with other people. And I just feel incredibly blessed.
Yeah, me too, honestly. Even if I feel shit, if I go out of my head for a moment and look at it from the side, life is beautiful. Although I feel shit, it's still pretty beautiful. So, hey, but Jake, thank you so much for your wisdom and your time. And it's been amazing to talk to you again over 1.5 years. I hope we can do it actually again in a few months. So, we wouldn't have to wait one
I
year.
gotta do the live streams again and get you on,
Yeah, yeah.
in the quad box. Get two other interesting people and we can just chat.
You asked a few times I was in Ukraine or I
Yeah,
was
you were
like
traveling. You just got
partying,
married.
and
Yeah,
yeah, now that I'm sober, I can do it.
perfect. Well, I might do that then. Not this weekend, but the weekend after. I'll see if I can get you and maybe two other people to agree for one of these live streams.
I'll be on. Let me know, man. Yeah.
All right,
All
Artur.
right.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Take care.